I would more say that like we should just be faithfully present. I think that's a helpful turn of phrase of, okay, we need to be present wherever we're at, be present, do the task that you're supposed to do it to the glory of God, and be faithful to God, be faithful with the ethics that might come along with that. And that's my overarching approach, that regardless of what happens to your job, God knows the future. He's not going to be surprised by your job being displaced. He cares for you more than the lilies, and you are going to be fine. Do your job, whatever it is, to the glory of God. If you lose your job, go look for a new one, or figure out what God has for you. Maybe it's volunteering or whatever.
It's almost like plant houses, plant gardens, build houses, marry your sons and your daughters, seek the welfare of the city to which I have displaced you.
Hello and welcome to What Would Jesus Tech? My name is Andrew Noble. I am a professor at Heritage College and Seminary. Well, adjunct, but we can all put adjunct. Okay, I'm starting that again. All right. Hello and welcome to What Would Jesus Tech? Does God care if AI does jobs for us? Little tasks here and there. What if our entire jobs are displaced by AI? How should Christians respond? We want to talk about this today with Joel Jacob, who is a futurist. Is that true, Joel? Are you still a futurist?
Yeah, I would still say futurist, self-declared. Yeah.
Yeah. He is also a product manager. We also have Austin. You are a pastor, and would you call yourself a techie, Austin?
I would call myself a techie, but in a qualified sense. I try to be a techie that writers can tolerate, and a writer that techies find annoying. And I try to hit that sweet spot in the middle.
Yep. And I am Andrew Noble, and I'm an adjunct professor at Heritage College and Seminary. And this is a topic that has been increasingly brought up to me. Of like, I was with a youth group a couple of weeks ago, and they basically asked, one of the first questions that they asked was, how should I prepare for a future where AI is doing more and more work? And so what kind of jobs should I go into or train for? So I think that's part of this discussion. But I think one way to think about this question of should AI do my job for me is by taking a look at a recent economic study. And so this is more of a conservative estimate. But basically, right now, 32% of people work in office work jobs. So you got that number. 1 in 3 people work in office work jobs. 2125, so 100 years from now, that's going to drop down to only 15% of people working in those jobs. So we're talking about 1.2 billion people will be displaced. This is a one economic study, conservative estimate. So you think about 1.2 billion people who will no longer need to do their job because AI steps in, and that's over a 100-year time span. Is that surprising to you, Joel?
No, I mean, yeah, you put it something like 100-year time span. It's very hard to predict. Like we are having trouble predicting 10 years in the future right now with AI. So I think even 30 years would be seems like a long time in technology. So
Right.
Who knows?
So the stats that I just gave you are not actually what's going to happen in the future. It's what's already happened.
Yeah, I was about to say that's not 100 years in the future. That's that's by maybe not the end of the year, but maybe the end of next year. We're gonna hit that number a lot sooner than we realize.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that, but the only thing that I changed in that is the word office job to agriculture jobs. That in year 1800, 32% of people worked in agriculture jobs. Within 100 years, only 15% of people worked in those jobs. So by 1900, which was a pretty significant drop. At that time, 280 million people were displaced. And now only 1.2% of people work in agriculture. So there's been a massive change that has already existed because of technology displacing jobs. And this is not a new phenomenon. The share of jobs that are done by humans gets displaced based around what kind of technology is able to step in and replace human work. So I'm showing on the screen right now for those who watch on YouTube. just the drop. By the way, if you'd like to support us on Patreon, we would love your support, because one of the financial things we're trying to figure out right now is the increased cost of putting video on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It will increase our tier per month if we want to do that. So we'd love for you, if you listen and you enjoy the video version, to support us on Patreon as we try to increase that. But anyways, the drop is significant for work in labor market. And I just like to start off with this as context for, don't be surprised that some jobs are going to get taken away. This is part
Oh
of
yeah.
living in this world, right? Like
It's
we could,
it's not even don't be surprised. Like this is something that I think, especially if you're listening to this and if you're a pastor, if you're in the ministry world, this is something you need to actively prepare for. We're not ready for a country where an entire generation of adults that went to college to learn to code or learn to work in software or do office jobs, anything that the last tech revolution promised a way to the American dream. Like, we're not ready for when an entire generation of people gets displaced by that. And churches especially are not ready, and I don't think have like fully grappled with like the financial hit that's going to be when a major career path and the generally above average salaries that those commends. What happens when tithing and giving from those salaries evaporates? That will hit churches pretty substantially, and I don't think we're ready for that.
I mean, okay, I know we're not really actually going to talk about the impact of AI on tithing, but it might be a little bit of a good tangent that you mentioned it, because another friend of mine in the Valley was saying, hey, like, I want to talk to pastors about this. How's it going to impact tithing and church revenue and like how the church functions? And if you take the example that Andrew gave with agriculture, I'm sure people were thinking, like, hey, we're going to lose our jobs to these machines. We're not going to be making the money from selling our crops. So there's going to be a period of time where people, are in this transition period where they don't have money coming in. They need to be supported other ways.
Yeah,
Obviously, they managed that in the past. Now, of course, it's much faster. So it is different, right?
right.
But I think the fundamental maybe premise that I don't know is true is that, will we actually have less people working and less income coming in? Or, with that whole thing of abundance, will there be more entrepreneurs? And actually, with more entrepreneurs, instead of $100,000 salary, you actually have a lot of people making like $1 million salary because they're selling um,
I I'm generally
goods.
I'm generally skeptical of the abundance theory as a whole. I like it. It sounds great. There's a lot of I'll believe it when I see it with the current abundance theory. I read a piece, I think it was in Inc. Earlier this week, of a senior software developer who is in his late 40s, who's now stuck working the night shift at McDonald's because AI ate his job. Uh, I think there will be definitely people that go that route. Like you said, there will be people that like lean into uh, an entrepreneurial path forward, but certainly not everybody. Not everybody's cut out for the entrepreneurial lifestyle. I think there will be far more people that get completely sidetracked and will never recover from it, and that will impact their retirement. It'll impact their end of life care. Uh, not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone
No,
succeeds at
yeah,
being
it's
an
true.
entrepreneur.
but you guys are, it seems that, Austin, you're the most clear on there being a huge displacement going forward due to AI. You think this is going to clearly happen. Joel, you referenced you're not sure about this. Can you defend that thesis? Because I am not clear on whether or not that's going to happen. I think there's going to be some, but I do think there's a
Yeah,
lot of overstatements. And I don't know if it's going to displace jobs as much as the agricultural revolution did. Like
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of jobs that are getting, in the same way Microsoft Word or the internet changed a lot of jobs, but didn't fundamentally replace them. It, like, yes, there was, but it just, new jobs were created because now there's new spreadsheets to have, and new, like, and
sure.
new jobs in marketing to now advertise to the internet, and new companies that get started as a result of it. So um make the case that AI is truly going to be a massive displacement of jobs.
Yeah. So I would say it's okay. So if we go to this agriculture example, it's not exactly that the invention at the time was just tractors. It was actually part of a broader industrial revolution, right? Which is like, okay, the invention of steam. And
Mhm.
that's like the, let's say, spearhead of, what changed it. But there's also like mechanization, the ability to do like combustion engines, like all of these type of things. And it's like, well, steam turned into other type of combustion engines, right? So broadly we say, hey, steam, then electricity, then like computing, which was like the transistor, and then we have like industry 4.0, which is like the smart factories, smart buildings, like connectivity really is what that was. It's like internet connectivity was like the one after computing, right? Similarly we like had personal computers, let's say
Mhm.
in 80s 90s. Is kind of niche, people were doing things with MS-DOS, stuff like that. Windows or early 95. And then you go into the internet, right? So that was like that next revolution. And then now you have all these like internet companies where you have like Uber, Airbnb, all of these new industries that like are using the latest revolution. So with that sort of paradigm, I do think that like this fifth industrial revolution is around intelligence and artificial intelligence or intelligent systems or systems of intelligence, right? All of these different ways that it will start propagating into different areas and adjacent things like robotics. So now you have intelligence and you have like all the previous revolutions of like computing, and that keeps
Mhm.
progressing. So now you have like intelligent robots, not just like dumb robots, and like multimodal or humanoid, like all of these type of things, right? So they're hitting at the same time. So all of that preamble to say that I do believe if you're taking a larger period of time, let's say like 20 years, there is going to be a massive transition, or you could say displacement of jobs. But what I don't think is that people will just stop working. I think there will be like new jobs, just and like it's not just one revolution, right? Like 4 industrial revolutions, people transition to like, hey, I'm managing the automated systems in the factory. Oh, now I'm managing the computers. Oh, like now I'm managing the infrastructure. So there is like always some new stuff. I think today we don't really know as much what those roles are, but we're starting to see that. I think even tangentially last week, I think was it OpenAI, actually they announced that they're creating a whole new work stream for forward deployed engineers. And that's like somewhat of a newer role where it's like, hey, we want people to be deployed at other organizations to help them adopt and transform their company. And Palantir and some of these other companies made that term very popular, which is basically like an engineer or somewhat technical knowledge that can sit with the customer and customize and deliver that solution. So that role actually of customizing with AI to a unique product for that one customer might actually be much more popular than like one size fits all. I make a product and give it to everyone, right? So those are maybe like little breadcrumbs of how things are changing. And yeah, that's probably
Yeah,
the overall thesis.
yeah, because there's not a clear study that has proven at this point that AI has displaced this number of jobs or something like that. Like there has been some hype cycles about that, and whenever there's layoffs at these companies, it gets spun as layoffs due to AI. Sam Altman admitted to this last year that when companies are laying off people, it's just the way to do it is to say this is because we're automating so many things and we're using AI so well. That's why we're doing the layoffs. No, you're just looking for a way to brand and market
Yeah.
your layoffs to save money and to gain efficiency that companies have always done, and investors love the idea of you adopting new technology. So it's AI washing, I've heard it called.
Oh yeah.
Um,
That's a good term.
to just have an excuse that investors like for laying off and getting rid of some of
I
the
I I
expenses.
I genuinely find Sam Altman just a deeply untrustworthy individual, same as Mark Zuckerberg. And so that explanation, I think, makes a lot of sense for somebody who's trying to shield himself from the consequences of his product now being entirely out of his control. And well beyond his ability to rein in what he's unleashed. I don't. I don't necessarily know if it matters whether or not it's due to actual AI innovation or not. It is the stated reason for a lot of organizations, and it is the thing that is animating a lot of decision making in leadership right now, due to the FOMO of not of being left behind in this moment. And that's leading to a lot of really botched implementations. And we've heard stories of companies that do, real big AI layoffs, and then have to hire back a lot of people because the people that made the layoffs didn't understand the technology. They didn't quite understand how to implement AI. And so it's like, no, actually, we do need some humans back in the fold. But I find the AI washing idea, like, yeah, I'm sure that is true in some cases. But at the same time, there is such an animating impulse of FOMO when it comes to AI that, as long as it's the stated reason, like, I actually do take it as the stated reason. It's like that, like, I have no reason to believe otherwise, honestly.
Yeah, I'll split the middle. I think 50% of the time it actually might be AI transformation related layoffs, like Jack Dorsey at Block. He's
Yeah,
like, okay,
yeah.
it's like massive. Elon fired a lot at Twitter. That wasn't really AI. That was just like, hey, we can run this more efficiently, right? But those are massive layoffs. And then we have like even Cisco in our last earnings call just announced, hey, we're going to lay off 5%, right? So I know a lot of companies are doing layoffs. I don't think it's actually because they've said we've replaced these jobs with AI. I think it's like these are maybe areas that aren't the best way to double down. Let's redirect resources into another place. Maybe those people with those skills that were in those other roles don't actually fit the skills in the new roles we need. So we can't transition them. So the best way is actually to like move the headcount, but like lay off the people and like then, give them severance and all those things. So I think, there's a decent amount of people who overhired during COVID and all of these things.
Yes,
And
that's
there
an
is
important
a
point
AI
too.
washing. There is an AI washing, I think.
The Alliance for Secure AI has an AI job loss tracker that's very. It reminds me of like the COVID case trackers from the pandemic, where they go through and they track um, companies doing layoffs. How many jobs laid off, what industry they were in, how much of that workforce there is. And one of the things I really appreciate about their tracker is like whether it whether in the reason for the layoff, like, is AI either explicitly mentioned, is it implied, or is it blamed? And you look at the most recent batch of layoffs from Cloudflare, Coinbase, Cisco, like you just said, Oracle. A good number of these they flag as explicit, and that the reason why these layoffs are happening is directly related to AI. There are quite a few that AI's involvement is not clear, like it may be suspected or maybe insinuated, but it's not explicitly the reason given. But for a good number of these, AI is the stated reason. And I think that's just something we have to take into account.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's a very marketable way to talk about getting rid of jobs in order to do it. But yeah, anyway, all this to say, I do think there is some change that is happening. I do believe that AI is a transformative technology. It's going to change the way that people work. It's already happening. So don't hear me on being a complete AI skeptic. But I do want to always just be like, okay, what are we actually seeing so far? Because predicting the future is always hard. When OpenAI launched ChatGPT, they weren't expecting the use cases that came out of it, right?
Right.
And so I
Right.
still think we're in a moment of questioning whether or not there is going to be value. And I do want to get into the theology of this and thinking about, okay, well, let's go out a few years. What's going to happen when more and more humans, like, I think the driving thing is a real big question, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if AI is driving cars and they do it more safely than humans, which has been proven to be true, that's going to displace a lot of truckers, for example, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's a very clear, specific thing where you can see how jobs would get lost due to those things. And we, again, just to give a few more historical examples, because I think it's helpful to think about, people used to not trust going in an elevator unless there was a human operating it,
Yeah,
right?
crazy.
Hmm.
So elevators used to be always human operated, and now we have no problem with the technology taking that over. Bookkeeping clerks, there used to be ledgers and handwritten notes, and now obviously we're okay with that being electronic. Collecting tolls, here in
Oh
Canada,
gosh.
we
Oh
have the
my gosh.
407.
Yeah.
Imagine slowing down to a stop in order to give
It
someone a
used
I
to
had
be
to
piece
a
of
do that.
cash.
thing.
I had to do that a couple of years ago, and I'm like, okay, maybe AI is a good thing because I don't want to stop on a highway to give someone my credit card for $5. I just don't
And
want to do that.
in all of these examples, we are displacing humans from jobs. We are also decreasing the amount of human interaction, creating, if you will, a more inhuman society where we interact less with one another on a day-to-day basis. And it abstracts a human from the good of their labor. So the person who operates an elevator, he is able to have a conversation with you as you get into the elevator. Imagine no more awkward moments in an elevator because there's just a pleasant person there who it's their job to have a conversation, but also is able to do a job for you operating the machine. And then he gets the satisfaction of seeing the fruit of his labor. Whereas now the person who creates the elevator technology, they're not creating all of it. They're only creating one little part of it, and they're abstracted from the fruit of their labor. I mean, I sound like a Marxist here, and forgive me for appreciating some of Karl Marx's critique, but I do think there's something of like, oh, how is work changing? Work is changing in such a way that we are abstracted from the joy of saying, oh, it's well done now. Oh, it looks good. Oh, it
Yeah.
serves people. People are smiling because of what I've made. That doesn't happen as much anymore because we don't have the human doing the job that goes directly to the outcome. Even some of these jobs that I'm showing on the screen are like this. And I made these slides because I was doing this talk, and I just raised the question to them, like, I've made some of these slides with AI. Is my job getting displaced by giving this presentation right now, right? It's just an interesting thing that we can do some of this, but at the same time, you still need a human to oversee it because sometimes AI comes up with images like the difference between weaving cloth then and now, and they put a tractor in the room,
I was about
as
to say,
was called
this is
out
such a
on our
great
Discord
picture.
group.
This is such a great picture. I love this picture so much.
It's probably one of my favorites that AI has ever made because
It's so good. It's so
it
good.
shows making ice way back then. And then you look at the image and it's like, wait a second, those are a bunch of women in a call center.
Like, it's close. Like, it's so close on most of it, but when it's wrong, it's just really, really wrong.
Yeah. And so this is the nature of AI right now, is that it's jagged. Joel, do you want to talk about this jagged frontier of AI and how that's kind of impacting work right now?
I actually haven't heard the term, but I presume it means that different models have different levels of capabilities that
You
are.
haven't heard the term? I know a term that
No.
you don't.
Yeah,
This is like
please
a
expand
big
for the
one in the
layman.
last few months.
We need
It's
we need
basic.
we need a WWJT like dictionary, a lexicon of terms.
The jagged frontier is basically, if you think about all human intelligence as a circle, and sometimes it's used as like PhDs, just add a little clip to the human intelligence capacity
Okay,
or whatever.
yeah, I've seen those charts.
But then you do, what can AI do now? And what it can do, it's jagged. It's not a circle.
Okay,
It's
yeah, I've
really
seen the
good
chart.
at some
I've seen the
things.
chart. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a jagged intelligence. It's way ahead of humans in some capacities, like mathematics. All of a sudden, in the last 3 years, it's gone from being terrible at math to being able to solve some of the hardest math problems. So that's an example of it's ahead of humans. And so it's harder to say, is AI better at this job than human? Well, driving right now, at least in California, I would trust AI driver over a human driver, right? So that's the comparison that we're currently in, because when we're talking about displacing jobs, normally you need to prove that the AI can do it better than you. So this is some of the context. I do want to get into the theology, but it's kind of interesting just to sit with the history and to say, oh yeah, this has happened before. People used to spend hours a day washing clothes, and now they don't.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised that technology replaces jobs. If Adam made a shovel, to go into some theology, if Adam made a shovel to do his job of tending the garden, would God have gotten upset with him?
No.
Of course not. That's
No, the answer
silly.
is no. The answer is no. The answer is no. And to the another theological point too, especially with creation of work, it's like how many of the jobs that are getting displaced are jobs that are functionally a byproduct of the post-fall toil of work. How many of these jobs that are getting displaced are jobs that exist simply because of the fact that we live in a fallen and sinful world, and these jobs are necessary to curtail the weeds of work, and are jobs that are either dehumanizing or degrading, or just simply take a massive toll on you. There are jobs that will be displaced that I do think are going to be really good and life-giving and healthy jobs, but I do wonder if part of what is happening, at least in the tech sector right now, and to a lesser extent the marketing sector, is a displacement of very tedious, rote computer jobs that the tasks themselves are very monotonous and repetitive. They don't add much value except for being in the aggregate. And maybe those are jobs that we should be glad to see go, because they are not jobs that lead to human flourishing and fulfillment. They are not jobs. It's very difficult to justify doing jobs like that to the glory of God, because you're not actually doing the work. You're doing is just basically managing weeds in a very tedious way.
Yeah. Can you manage weeds in a very tedious way to the glory of God, though?
I think you can. I think you can. But I wouldn't want to do it. There was a lot about, my gosh, there was a lot about my decade in social media management that was a lot of that, like just very rote, tedious, monotonous computer work that if I were still in social media management, I would have already built my AI replacement. I know exactly what I needed to build, and with co-work in particular, like I could have done that. If I were to ever go into freelancing, I would not do what I did this time a year ago, and how very click monotonous it was. I would have AI do the vast majority of that kind of grating, repetitive computer working and computer tasks. If for no other reason than to free up the more creative, thoughtful side of that job that often gets swallowed up due to the tyranny of the urgent or the tyranny of the monotonous. And so I wonder, like, how many of those displacements, like I do think people with genuinely good, creative, fulfilling jobs are going to get displaced. I do wonder how many of these jobs, though, are jobs that when people are displaced from them and are able to find something else, they're not going to want to go back to.
Hmm. Yeah. Again, there's like a premise underlying what you're describing that I don't know if we're seeing proven, because as much as, yeah, it can get rid of some monotonous jobs, there's a different type of review work that is now obligatory with AI, of
Sure,
reviewing what the AI
sure,
does, which is tedious and,
sure.
soul crushing. And there's increasing reports of like AI induced anxiety, or just
Oh yeah,
a fretfulness, because of the way that you're now, like I talked to one developer the other day, and he's managing 11, 12 agents at
oh my
his
gosh,
peak
yeah,
every day. And so when you're managing that many agents, that's going to have a different kind of toll on you
right,
than doing code, where you get this sense of completedness of a line of code being written by yourself and it being done by you. It's going to feel better. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like
No,
this
I
is
completely agree. I completely agree with you.
so, but it is interesting to think about this, and thinking about it biblically, I cannot think about almost any subject without using this framework. And so my framework for approaching pretty much any topic is to say, how does the Bible talk about it through 4 or 6 different points in the story? The 4 points in the story are creation, fall, redemption, restoration. Sometimes I try to expand it to 6 in order to be more explicit about some of the ones in the middle. So it's creation, yes, the first 2 chapters, but not just the first 2 chapters, because you have tons of reference through scripture to the other other allusions to what happened in Genesis 1 and 2. Like in Romans, it talks about,
Or even
creation, or like,
Genesis 3 and 4 like are technically part of the fall narrative, but they have a lot to illustrate about creation on the backside of that.
right, right. But yeah, so then you need to think about that, but you also should think about the whole of the Old Testament. Don't throw out the prophets. This is one of the reasons why, Austin, I love your perspective on things, is that you're like gung-ho on saying maybe the Old Testament has something to say about technology, which we've talked about on other podcast episodes.
The rumors are true.
Every time it's like digital Babylon. That's like Austin's tagline now. But also the life of Jesus, that we can learn something through that. And so if we wanted to, I do this when I gave this talk, I went through each one of these 6 areas to talk about what they speak to about technology. I think one of the best like quotes when it comes to this is just comparing the Romans and the Greeks with the Christians. And so you have this statement: if God came into the world, what would he be like? For the ancient Greeks, he might have been a philosopher king. The ancient Romans might have looked for a just and noble statesman. But how does the God of the Hebrews come into the world? As a carpenter. And what you see, and that's from Philip Jensen, as quoted by Timothy Keller, and what you see in the creation narrative of Genesis 1 is God works. God is a working God. He makes things out of nothing, yes, but then he also crafts it. And there is a dignity given to work by God and given to us as a image of him to do the work of creation. And it's not the aftermath of a battle, but the plan of a craftsman, as Timothy Keller puts it. So at baseline, there's a dignity to work. There's even a dignity to work in the crappy jobs that Austin was describing. And there's a book called Protestant Social Teaching where they talk about this. And they have a section on talking about like all your work gives dignity to God. You are always kind of a
Right.
master of your work, and you reflect the master God. But you also, like, even if you're a slave, why does the New Testament tell you to
Right.
like be a good servant to your master? Isn't that demeaning? And it's like, no, you do it unto God rather than your human master, because you have a higher calling, a higher dignity than your master. And that's what dignifies you, even if you have a crummy job. And I
Right.
think that that dignity to work is really essential, because it can be so easy to look down on. And this is one of the reasons I kind of pushed back on your description of certain jobs that AI is replacing. Well, they weren't worth doing in the first place. And sure enough, like, I'm not going to go to my garden and take little drops of water in my hands. I'm going to use a pail of water or a watering bucket or a hose.
Sure.
Like, I'm not encouraging menial tasks. I encourage optimization and even risk taking and innovation and entrepreneurial, like,
Yeah. Yeah. And just
but
to be clear, and just to
yeah,
be clear on my own end too, like if the Lord has led you to a menial job, if in his providence that is the job he's given to you right now, like yes, you are supposed to work that job to the glory of God. And it is perfectly valid to groan the pain of the
yes,
toil of that job.
yeah,
I'm not saying don't hear me saying if you have a menial job you can just slack off and do whatever you want. No, that is not what I'm saying. Are supposed to do it to the glory of God, even though it's hard. And believe me, I've had some of those jobs. I know it's hard.
yeah. So for you, Joel, when you're working day to day and you're thinking about, working hard or whatever, what's motivating you? What's the thing that gets you as a Christian to do your work well, as opposed to it being about some other, just to make a paycheck, which maybe that is your primary motivation and your paycheck serves your family. But knowing you, I know that you're motivated by more than money.
Yeah, I think actually every job that I've had, if it ever felt like it was just a paycheck, I couldn't do it for too long. I would feel like
Yeah.
frustrated and be like, I can't just keep doing this. I have to do something that I feel like is contributing to the world on a bigger scale. And I don't know if that's kind of like um a bad way to look at it. It's like, oh, visions of grandeur sort of thing of like, oh,
Nah,
like I'm gonna do some big
nah.
thing. But there is this feeling of like, man, this can't be it. I think I mentioned the story even on this pod before of when I first started at Toyota. They said, hey, like the first 2 weeks, we want you to work on the line with the people and gain an understanding of what they go through. Because they're doing like this assembly of this like one tail lamp into the rear of the car, like all day long, 8 hours a day. And, like the first 2 days, I was like, okay, I like trying to learn it. And then after the third day, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't, I'm going to do this for 2 more, like week and a half more. And then you'd be looking at the clock, you'd be talking to Buddy over there. And like, it just becomes kind of like muscle memory at that point.
Yep.
So it's like that gave me a lot of appreciation of like, okay, yeah, like there is a value to doing it. Someone needs to do it. But like, I do think that we can always like aspire to do more. And I've been doing that every career change I've done. And now even like working in tech, it's like, hey, I'm building something that a user at the other end, it will make their life easier, simpler, more advanced. That is like a driving factor of feeling like there are people who benefit from this in like different ways. But that all to be said, and this might be jumping ahead a little bit more, is like I do also feel for some people who maybe they don't have the skills and they will get replaced by the products we create or something,
Yeah.
and they can't transition, and there is
Yes.
like an aspect of like, does God care about those people, or what do those people do? And I do, I don't know, I think there is a compassion. On the one hand, it's kind of like, I don't know that there is much other than like trying to help them retool. Um, but it's easier said than done. Like, cause how do you really
Yeah.
go and like help these people,
I don't know, at least in America, like I don't know if this happens. And obviously I don't want this to happen. Like obviously I do not want massive displacement of jobs from AI. I hope Joel is right in that there's a lot of new jobs created that people can transition to. But if that happens, uh I don't see a way forward without there being some kind of like AI New Deal federal
Mm.
intervention to kind of make that happen. Um, for whatever your opinions of the original New Deal notwithstanding, I think it's going to take something like that on that scale just to provide the shock absorption. I don't actually know if the private market will be able to solve that problem on its own.
That's a good idea, actually. AI New Deal. I'm gonna have to chew on that one for a bit of like, okay, we're gonna create
I
these
have a mixed
retooling
I have a
programs.
mixed I have mixed opinions on the New Deal. It was a very big, very complicated piece of legislature with a very, very complicated legacy and impact. But I do think it's an option on the table.
Andrew, sorry to
Well,
segue.
no, it's good. It reminds me of universal basic income that's been talked about, universal
Yeah,
basic income or UBI, giving people $1,000 a week or whatever it was, and people just did not
yeah. If
do
it
with their free time and free money. They didn't end up uh, producing more for the economy. They ended up
no,
just spending the money
Yeah,
or
yeah,
saving
yeah.
it.
so much of UBI theory and propaganda, just to call it for what it is, assumes a very Pelagian view of human nature.
Yeah,
A
benevolent.
Yeah, but like humans are basically good. Sin is something that humans have in and of themselves the power and ability to conquer and defeat apart from Christ, apart from the Spirit. If you start with a biblical anthropology of man and work outwards to monetary policy, the results of mass UBI studies are not at all surprising.
Hmm. Yeah. And as Christians, we should both hope all things. So there is an optimistic posture as Christians, but we do believe in original sin, and we believe that people are not just good beings who happen to do bad things every once in a while, but we are corrupt in our nature, that we're
Yep.
fallen in our nature. And so that will mean that even though capitalism has helped create a whole bunch of jobs and income and revenue, some of that is because of sin.
Yes,
Frankly, like
absolutely,
greed
absolutely.
has done that. Now, it also has had some positive side effects of increased trust with one another and collaboration, and capitalism has some of those side effects.
Yeah.
But I've been reading through C.S. Lewis recently. He has this like portrayal of aliens on another planet who have these different jobs. It's great,
Are we talking about the
great
space
story.
trilogy? Are we talking about the
Yeah,
space trilogy?
just a little bit,
Oh boy.
because they have this way of doing work, and Ransom, one of the characters, asks, well, do they have a specialization? Out of the Silent Planet, do they have a specialization where the Hrasa, or no, not the Hrasa, the
Sworns.
no, the other one, the Farron Triggle,
the Feifel Triggy.
Feifel Triggy, yeah, however you pronounce it, because they're like the real craftsmen, the artists. There's one of them that like paints a portrayal of Ransom or whatever, but then he basically asks them, like, you're these artists or whatever, so who's going to the mines in order to get the materials so that you can make all this art? Like, people must not like that job. And the response back, and this is kind of a portrayal of like this idealistic planet, and they're like, well, of course the people who are the ones doing the art have to go and do the mining, because then they get a sense of the character. You can't be a good artist unless you know where your artwork came from, which is just a wild thing to think. That imagine only creating something on a computer if you knew where every part of your computer where it came from. Like, it's impossible in our modern society now. I was talking about this with a friend of mine, and he was describing to me a show where it's again a futuristic show, and apparently, there's a tally for how many people can get into heaven, and it's called The Good Life, or The Good Place.
The Good Place? The Good Place. Oh,
The Good Place.
Great.
And
love that show.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but basically the way that he was describing it to me is that no one can get into heaven beyond the 1800s, because now everything that you do, you end up using something that is involved in some sinful activity, and you're complicit in it. So they basically make the point that the world is filled with sin.
The Good Place, if you enjoy like really thoughtful philosophical television, The Good Place is one of the most philosophically engaging shows I think I've ever seen, but it's very fun. It's a comedy. It's very funny. But it is like from a secular humanist standpoint, like exploring just a lot of really in-depth stuff about the good life, what it means to be a good person, justice, life after death. Tremendous show. Could not recommend it more highly.
Yeah. So anyways, we're kind of getting a little off subject, but I think it's helpful to just think about these different views of work, these different portrayals of, oh, maybe there's something we're going to lose by losing the grittiness of work. That has already happened through the first two industrial revolutions. I think that's my major point in speaking about this, is that we already live in a society where a ton of work has been displaced, and we've reaped the benefits of that. I'm very glad for air conditioning and all this kind of stuff. And so I fundamentally do not have a posture of hate towards AI. I do not have a posture of a Luddite that wants to burn the data factories. I also don't have personally an accelerationist approach, /whatever.
Futurist even?
Or futurist even. I would more say that, like, we should just be faithfully present. I think that's a helpful turn of phrase of, okay, we need to be present wherever we're at, be present, do the task that you're supposed to do it to the glory of God, and be faithful to God, be faithful with the ethics that might come along with that. And that's my overarching approach, that regardless of what happens to your job, God knows the future. He's not going to be surprised by your job being displaced. He cares for you more than the lilies, and you are going to be fine. Do your job, whatever it is, to the glory of God. If you lose your job, go look for a new one, or figure out what God has for you. Maybe it's volunteering or whatever.
It's almost like plant houses, plant gardens, build houses, marry your sons and your daughters, seek the welfare of the city to which I have displaced you, physically uprooted you from your Judean homeland and destroyed the temple that you are so familiar with and put you somewhere else. Like, I don't know, maybe there's something in the Bible that would help us navigate that. I don't know. Just a thought.
Well, yeah, like I don't actually know the answer to the question, so I'll ask it. Is like, you're talking about those, let's say 4 or 6 like phases in the Bible. Let's say it was about work when we talked about creation of work, right? Mm-hmm. Is there, some key passages about the loss of work or losing work? And, God, is that, or maybe it's like somewhat related to that?
The most important passage to me in answer to that question that I also think is just super timely for our AI movement is, I'll pull it up on the screen just while I'm reading it, is Ephesians 4:28. Let the
Yeah.
thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. So in this scenario, someone was displaced from their job because they became a Christian, actually. It was a thief who was making money through thieving. You could also do the scenario of Jesus and the tax collectors. Tax collectors had to figure out their income differently after they became Christians because, oh, wait, we can't just, I mean, we can take what's appropriate to take for our income, but we can't be lavish with this. We need to do what's honoring to God. And so it gets back to the faithful present, but it's also just interesting in the context of AI that how much of AI is stealing. Anyways, so so it's like
Subtly, just
subtle like reminder of ethics as Christians if you are portraying your work. And we launched the ebook, Jesus Was a Techie, and I got a piece of feedback like, oh, maybe you need to be more clear that this book was co-written or used AI. And I was like, oh yeah, we could have been like, it's there in every landing page, but it's not in the title and it wasn't necessarily in the
Yeah.
image. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna change the landing pages and I'm gonna make sure that it's clear that we're not stealing the work of AI and portraying it as our own. This is a book that was made with the help of AI, and now it's on the book cover and all this kind of stuff that we've updated. Anyways, and the ebook is a great summary of our podcast episodes, so that you don't need to catch up on all of them by listening to them all. But anyways, back to Ephesians 4:28. The goal of work is to serve others. The goal of work is to glorify God. The goal of work is to just do it well, do it honestly with your own hands, not living off of the means of others. And so if your job gets displaced, and even if the government says, we're going to give you money every month, you still need to work.
Yep.
According to Christian doctrine and practice and the ethics of Christianity, you ought to work. Now, we sometimes think of work in a very specific way as a career that you do 9 to 5 or something where you need to be employed by someone else. Maybe your work, in my case, I am not familiar right now in my season of life with making a whole lot of money by doing a PhD. I'll just be honest with the world that when you do a theology PhD, I did try to apply for a government grant that would have been, made sure that I was doing quite well, but then the government grant did not fall through, which is disappointing, but not surprising that the Canadian government didn't think my theology of idolatry and AI was
Well,
that relevant.
you're not cashing out those rich George Soros checks
No,
from building your from building your theology platform. He's not
no.
bankrolling your lavish lifestyle.
But the point is that you need to still work. You need to have a project. You need to work towards something. And yeah, the grandeur, I so resonate with what Joel was saying earlier, because I remember doing a paternity leave. Maybe this is relevant for you guys right now. And feeling like, because I took 6 or 7 months off work.
6 or 7 months.
It's Canadians,
I split it with my wife, and
we get 18 months total.
You get 18 months as Canadians.
I was going stir crazy at the end of my 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I only had one kid with me, this 1-year-old or almost 1-year-old, and I was like, oh, I need a break, I better like it was brutal how bad I was at doing what I did then. And I have a higher capacity now, I think, but all that to say is I didn't have a view of how my work as just a dad truly mattered. And some of that I have had to go through some seasons of suffering that have helped me see the value and gratitude and just to appreciate whatever God has put in front of you, be faithfully present to it, and don't have a vision of grandeur that is unattainable or just all futuristic, because you need to serve God today. Today, you have a job to do today. And yes, you can dream, and yes, we should build, and yes, we should take risks, and yes, all these things that a lot of Christians maybe frown against. But there's a more fundamental posture of receiving what the work that God has for you today and serving others. So yeah, there's my one verse and some thoughts on that. But we should probably wrap this up. I think this has been a good discussion. And if you want to listen more to some thoughts that we have on a number of different topics, feel free to support us on Patreon, where we have a episode a month that comes out, to shorter episodes often, but on a topic or two that are just like this, where the three of us or one of us or two of us talk through an issue and use tech, find rest, and glorify God. Take care.
See y'all.